Welcome to the Economist in Your Ear podcast. I want you to just take a moment and ask yourself a question, a really key one, about global health. How much of the world's new medical discovery, the truly groundbreaking stuff, will come from outside the West in, say, a decade?
That's a great question because for 70 years, major pharma discovery has basically meant American or European labs, right?
Exactly. But that whole landscape,
Yeah.
it's undergoing this tectonic shift right now. China, which, we've long seen as just the world's factory for generic droles for basic ingredients, is very, very quickly turning into a global innovation powerhouse.
It really is.
So today, we're really going to get into the evidence. We're testing this central claim that Chinese pharma is truly on the cusp of going global.
And that means we have to go beyond just, listing some impressive stats.
Yes. We need to critically look at the financial scale, the science, and maybe most importantly, the huge geopolitical headwinds that are going to shape all of this.
And this whole exploration is just so essential for understanding the future of medicine.
Why do you say that?
Well, think about the pressure on major Western pharma companies. They're all facing these massive revenue gaps from expiring patents, what the industry calls patent cliffs.
Right.
So this new flow of innovation from China, it's not just a commercial threat anymore. For many, it's becoming a strategic necessity for the entire global drug pipeline.
Okay, so let's unpack that. Let's start with the sheer scale of this transformation. The numbers alone, they show a massive, massive acceleration.
They really do.
In terms of R&D, for instance, China is now the world's second largest developer of new medicines.
Second largest. They've leapfrogged most of Europe in just a few years. It's really astonishing.
And that position is built on some incredible activity on the ground.
Oh, absolutely. If you just look at the raw infrastructure, think about this. Nearly 1/3 of all global clinical trials last year were run in China.
1/3 of all of them.
1/3. And that scale, it gives them this profound advantage. They can leverage these huge, unified patient populations and, an increasingly efficient trial system.
So they can recruit faster.
Much faster. It shortens the study timelines significantly, which is, a massive competitive edge when you're racing to market.
But it's not just about the volume of patients, is it? It's the whole institutional overhaul that makes this feel credible.
That's the key. The regulatory acceleration has been a complete game changer.
Look at the numbers for approved new medicines. Back in 2015, it was only 11 new drugs approved?
Just 11.
And by 2024, that number jumps to 93.
And the really critical part, almost half of those, nearly half, originated inside China itself.
Wow.
Those reforms, they show this big shift from a sort of closed, slower domestic system to one that's now largely aligned with international norms.
So they're playing by the same rules as everyone else now?
For the most part, yes. They're aligning with global standards, which makes it so much smoother for their firms to collaborate with and eventually, license their assets to Western partners.
And what about the talent?
That's the other turbocharger. You have all this overseas trained talent returning home, bringing back decades of cutting-edge R&D experience.
So the foundations are just incredibly strong. It isn't just a government plan. It's a deep, sustained investment in both science and credibility.
It is, and you can see that reflected in the financial markets. They're valuing Chinese pharma for its intellectual property now, not just its manufacturing.
What are the forecasts saying?
Well, reports from places like Morgan Stanley project that annual revenue from China-originated drugs could hit something like $34 billion by 2030.
$34 billion.
And if that trajectory holds, it could potentially balloon to $220 billion by 2040.
That projection is, that's a complete change in how the world values their contribution.
Exactly. It confirms the whole narrative we're talking about. They're moving up the value chain.
I'm just being fast followers.
Right. They started with that reliable, lower-risk strategy of improving existing blockbuster drugs. But now they're chasing the high-risk, high-reward stuff.
The truly novel first-in-class innovation.
Precisely. Molecules that target diseases in totally new ways. And that's where the multi-billion-dollar valuations come from.
Okay, but innovating is one thing. Where is all this new science being focused?
Well, if you look at the R&D pipeline, oncology is still a massive priority.
Cancer treatments, which makes sense given the huge global need.
Of course. And we saw that huge symbolic win back in 2019, didn't we?
You mean with Beyond Medicines, which used to be Beijing?
Yes. They secured FDA approval for a cancer therapy, and that wasn't just, ticking a regulatory box.
No, that was China proving it could clear the highest, most rigorous hurdle in the Western world.
And more recently, you have Akeso Bio showing really favorable results for a new lung cancer treatment.
So oncology is a natural fit, but what else? Where's the other big strategic push?
This is where it gets really fascinating. Metabolic disease, specifically treatments for obesity.
Ah, the weight loss drugs.
Exactly. The sources we're looking at suggest that roughly 1/3 of the entire world's obesity drug pipeline is now under development in China.
A third of the global pipeline. Why such a intense focus there?
It's deeply market-driven. They are looking ahead, anticipating the end of key patents for the current blockbuster drugs. Those patent cliffs we mentioned.
So they're getting ready to jump in as soon as the market opens up.
Perfectly positioned. By developing follow-on drugs and new competitors right now, they can seize market share in what's going to be one of the world's most lucrative therapeutic areas.
And that strategic positioning, I guess that explains this growing interdependence we're seeing.
It does. Western multinationals, they're facing those patent expirations. They need to fill these huge pipeline gaps, and they are increasingly looking east.
We've seen some really high-profile deals that make this dependency very clear.
Like Pfizer partnering with 3S Bio.
Right, for the rights to an oncology drug outside China. Or GlaxoSmithKline doing a deal with Hengrui for a respiratory treatment.
And these are not small deals. This means Western giants are spending enormous sums just to get access to Chinese scientific breakthroughs.
So it confirms China's status as a value exporter.
That's a great way to put it. They're not just selling chemical building blocks anymore. They're exporting high-value intellectual property,
The fully developed assets.
which are now essential for sustaining global pharma innovation. It forces every global player to integrate Chinese R&D into their long-term strategy. It's a source of discovery now, not just a market or a factory.
Okay, so the science is there, the money is there, the narrative of being on the cusp seems compelling.
It is, but this is where we have to apply that critical lens. Because global dominance, it takes more than just good science and cash.
This is where we challenge that assumption of guaranteed global scale.
Exactly. Let's talk about the headwinds.
And the first one is a bit of a paradox, isn't it? It actually comes from their success at home, the constraints of their own domestic market.
Yes. China is the world's second largest drug market. But it is extremely difficult to make a profit on innovative, high-cost therapies there.
Because of things like volume-based procurement or VBP.
That's a crucial point for you to understand. VBP is essentially centralized price negotiation on a massive scale.
The government negotiates for the whole country at once.
Right. And in exchange for huge purchasing volumes, they demand dramatically lower prices, sometimes 50% or more off a new drug.
So if your domestic margins are getting squeezed that hard.
How do you fund the massive expansion you need for global sales teams, for marketing, for manufacturing on multiple continents?
It's a real catch-22.
It is. The tight margins at home force them to look to international markets like the US and Europe for profitability.
But trying to enter those markets brings us straight to the elephant in the room.
Geopolitics.
And the regulatory maze.
They're unavoidable friction points. The US and Europe are, rapidly reassessing their supply chain exposure, especially for critical medicines.
And beyond the supply chain, there's the data issue.
Cross-border data governance is maybe the biggest headwind right now for these novel treatments. We've seen the FDA, for example, pause approvals that involve transferring sensitive U.S. genetic data.
And this isn't just red tape, is it?
No, not at all. It relates to national security, to trust, to concerns over IP and data security. And it's only getting more complex.
How so?
Because advanced drug discovery, especially using AI, involves massive amounts of patient data. And the rules for governing that flow of data are under intense scrutiny.
Right. A recent U.S. congressional report even highlighted China's advances in AI-enabled drug discovery as a new front in this global competition.
So it's not just about the molecule anymore. It's platform versus platform. And the governance frameworks, honestly, they just haven't caught up to the technology yet.
Which brings up a really fundamental question about their whole global strategy. Are they truly building their own durable global capabilities? Or are they mostly just acting as asset launchers for others?
That is the critical distinction. Right now, most of their big international successes are coming from licensing deals.
So a Western multinational like a Pfizer or a GSK takes the Chinese asset and does all the heavy lifting.
Exactly. They handle the expensive, complex, regulatory-heavy global commercialization. The sales forces, the marketing, the compliance in 50 different countries.
So while that proves the science is world-class.
It doesn't necessarily prove they can build a durable global presence themselves. That's the much harder second-order challenge. A lot of these firms are still in the very early stages of building that kind of comprehensive footprint.
So to pull this all together, the innovation is real, the investment is deep, the clinical efficiency is, frankly, unmatched.
But the path to global leadership is constrained.
Constrained by tough domestic economics, pushing them out.
And colliding directly with external geopolitical friction that makes that expansion incredibly risky. They've solved the science problem, now they have to solve the geopolitical and logistics problem.
But we are seeing them adapt, right? They're being proactive. I'm thinking of this NewCo structure.
Yes, the NewCo model is a fascinating solution.
So a Chinese biotech will set up a totally separate, independent company based in the U.S., often with global investors.
It's a very clever way to de-risk the asset.
How does it do that?
By creating a legally independent entity on U.S. soil governed by U.S. law, they can insulate the core intellectual property from some of those cross-border governance risks.
It makes the drug more palatable to Western investors and regulators.
And probably patients, too, who might be worried about supply chains and data security. It just shows they're actively adapting to these challenges.
So let's step back one more time for a final thought. If we look at this intensifying global competition, what does it mean for all of us?
Well, this rivalry, which is fueled by Chinese innovation on one side and persistent Western demand for new drugs on the other, it could dramatically accelerate discovery.
And potentially lower the cost of new treatments over time.
It could. So if this competition successfully drives down prices and speeds up the global flow of new medicines, you have to ask,
Who are the biggest long-term winners?
could it actually be patients worldwide, especially those in lower-income countries, regardless of where the innovation came from? That's a really profound thought to sit with as this all plays out.
It is a critical piece of context. We've watched China pivot from just a manufacturing base to a true source of innovation. It's created this dynamic global balancing act between partnership and risk. The map has fundamentally changed. Thanks for listening. Follow us for daily insights into world affairs, and don't forget to like, comment, and share.